Welcome to this tutorial on how to have the best success with your credentials packet. I am Jacqueline Whittemore and I am the current chairperson of the Credentials Committee. In addition to myself, the other members of the committee include Philippe de Brito Gavallo, Joe Bruner, Patty Lathan, Vanessa Von Hendy Wilson, Michael Wood, Carrie Waters, and Claire Wiegand. We look forward to working together throughout this coming year in order to have a very successful and efficient credential season. The credentialing process is comprised of a number of steps. The first step is that the candidate must be in an approved residency program, either in process or having successfully completed the program. They have to either be in the process of taking the general examination or have completed it successfully. They have to achieve a first author publication relevant to small animal internal medicine and approved by the Credentials Committee. They have to submit their credentials packet, take the specialty exam, and then complete any remaining conditional requirements. The majority of this presentation is going to be on completion of the credentials packet because there are a number of little steps that can make a big difference in the ease in getting your packet approved. For details on the packet itself, you can go to this website, acvim.org, Candidates SAIM Credentials, to download the informational packet with all of the forms. Things that are comprised in the packet include the application form itself, 3 referee letters, the annual progress form, the scholarly activity report, either the publication or a letter of understanding, and then the credentialing fee. All of these materials are due October 1st, and this is a drop-dead deadline. If the deadline is missed, there is no process for appeal or overturning missing the deadline, and there really is no point in even trying to contact anyone because this will not be changed. When we think about the credentials application form, this is page 1 of it here. It's pretty small even on a lecture capture, so I'm going to go ahead and make it bigger. So this is the last year's form. This will potentially be updated a little bit this coming year, so you'll want to, of course, look at your current form, but the themes always apply. Things that people forget to do, the first thing is to sign the form here at the very top. This first signature is basically applying to sit the credentials and to sit the examination, and it's a waiver of liability, and this is step 1. The second thing that people can forget to do is to use the correct name and information. And what I mean by that is that this information that's submitted on this form needs to match the information the ACVIM has on file for you. So if you have had a change in marital or life status such that your name has changed, or if your address has changed, then that information needs to be updated with ACVIM so that the information on the form matches what the office has. This is particularly important when it comes to phone numbers and email address, which is on the next page, because these are used to contact you if you have any questions about your packet. If we don't have accurate information or information that on the number and email that you actually use and check, then we're not going to be able to resolve issues and your packet will end up being turned down. Here we can see email at the very top of this page right here. It's also important that you provide your ACVIM assigned ID. This is necessary for cross-checking to make sure that we really have the same thing. If there's 2 John Smiths, we want to make sure it's the right one. You need to list the year that you are taking or have taken the general exam, and if you've already taken it, you want to list the result. And then there's a spot for you to fill in the publication information. If you have not completed your publication requirement, then you're going to leave that section blank. You don't want to fill it in with what you're guessing it's going to be. This is where you put in what has already been accepted and approved by the Credentials Committee. In this section, you're going to list your 3 references that are going to complete referee forms. You want to make sure these match. So if you've completed this and you put in 3 references, but it turns out one of them has gone on vacation to Australia for a month, and so you need to change out that reference, you just need to make sure it's changed in both places so that the names given on this form match the actual forms received. And then here you need to sign the form again. So you're signing this first form in 2 places. And this is signing and attesting that the information provided is accurate, basically. So that's the first form. This form is going to be modified a little in the coming year to include a checklist section, to help avoid forgetting to upload all the forms or include all of the necessary information. And so it will be slightly different, but the themes are still going to apply. What about the referee forms? Well, the places where things go wrong here, and of course, the candidate does not complete this form, the referee does, but the things you want to help remind people of is they need to make sure, again, their name and address matches the information on the application form, and they need to answer all 4 questions. They also need to read the form carefully. So the way it's currently structured is there's 3 yes/no questions, but people often check yes on number 3 when they really mean no, because they're just in a habit of going down yes, yes, she's great, yes, yes, he's got it together, and don't notice that what this says is, are there characteristics that detract from fitness to sit the exam? So you do want to make sure they've read it carefully. And finally, it's very important that the referee sign the form. This is a real form with information redacted on it, but what you can see is we've got a couple of problems here. That brings us to the annual progress form. And I do have a little secret for you, and that secret is that we hate it too. Unfortunately, right now, ACVIM does not have the funds available to develop an electronic accounting and gatekeeping system like is used by some other residency programs. And additionally, because of some flexibility that you'll see in the form with regard to, for example, small animal medicine rotations occurring in more than one location, it would be very hard for a computer to automate this process and appropriately assign the weeks to the right category. And so for now, we're stuck with a paper form. I understand that we hate it and you hate it, but we really want to avoid having to use the stress reduction kit, so let's go ahead and figure out what we can do to make the form work the best as possible. This is an older example of the form, but again, the themes apply. So the first thing that's going to be important to note is the use of initials versus signatures. We understand that this form now is used over 3 years, which means it can be very easy to run out of space. And so one thing that is being done on the new form is it will have a signature page where you can have a key what signatures go with which initials and what that person's qualifications are. And that should hopefully allow you, if you need to use initials without us having to kick it back because we can't attest that these people really are meeting the necessary criteria as supervising diplomates. The second thing is that if you do have multiple signatures on a line, you need to have those signatures or initials tied to the number of weeks. So as the weeks span across the years, we can't just initial. The initials need to go with how many weeks. So did HR supervise 4 weeks or 2? So that needs to be laid out. Here we can see there's a rotation that's listed, but there's no verifying no signature or initials verifying supervision. So that'd be another place this would have to be kicked back. And then if you look down at the bottom and you count everything up in the column, it does not end up equaling 52. It's going to be really important that you triple check this, particularly because you're writing over the form and scanning and then writing over the form, and so this can't be automated in the computer. These are things that makes Panda sad, and so we don't want to have a sad Panda. So if you can just stay on top of these little details, it greatly improves the ability for us to review the packet, confirm you're in compliance, and just go ahead and sign you off. The scholarly activity form, again, will make it bigger. It's got a number of different things on it, and what you can see is that, there's a lot of different things on it. They apply to different years. You need to make sure you start early in recording information on this form and also in accomplishing the achievements. When you attend your major veterinary or human conference, you need to make sure to include proof of attendance. So this will be the certificate of attendance that is given to you at the conference. So we need a copy of that to confirm you actually were there. The veterinary conference presentations I need to draw attention to actually. This is going to be where you have presented a topic, and you, as per the gig, you'll see you need to give a formal presentation once a year, and so you're going to give the name of the topic and the venue. It may be an actual conference or it may be an internal venue, but that information needs to be provided here for each year. This gets to starting early. Most people aren't thinking about credentialing in year 1, however, you need to have done that presentation in year 1. So you want to make sure you get that in. And then down here for the additional requirements, you want to plan ahead. There's a lot of different things on here that can be done to meet this requirement, but they can't really be added on at the last minute. If you end up having to do, for example, short courses, you're really going to want to have that out of the way, if possible, before you go into that third year with the big quiz. And there's no such thing as too much information. So when your resident advisor includes their letter documenting things with an asterisk, they should go ahead and include information on what is the title of the research project. How do we know it's pertinent to small animal medicine? Stuff like that. Without knowing, we really can't confirm that it does meet these criteria. So including just the title and that you have executed and that you were the PI, that kind of information will really help a lot. And then if you have documents, you're going to go ahead, supporting documentation, and include it. What about that publication? Well, I'm thinking about Sir Alfred Tennyson in charge of the Light Brigade, and the purpose of this talk is not to reason why. I'm not here to talk about why the publication requirement exists. That's something for the college to decide. The purpose of the Credentials Committee is simply to ensure that the requirements are met. And so the focus is on my tutorial here is on how do you make sure the requirements are met and show us the requirements are met. And really the big focus is that we want you credentialed. We want you to succeed, but we also have to do due diligence, so help us make it easy. So what are things that are going to make things easy? The first is make sure that your topic is relevant to the specialty of small animal internal medicine. And I have use the word specialty in this talk to really help you with the lens of your focus. So you want to stay focused. If you are presenting on for example, a skin condition, you really want to be able to demonstrate how that is about the specialty of internal medicine, not a big thing about skin in a dog that happens to have diabetes, something like that. Topics that are recommended, they're going to be easy, slam dunk, no-brainers, are going to be endocrinology, gastroenterology, infectious disease, so on. This list here on the left. Things that you're probably going to want to avoid are going to be things like dentistry and dermatology, surgery. Everything eventually touches medicine, and that's why many of us like it, is that we get to wear many hats. But when we're looking at meeting the specialty requirement or publication requirement of relevance to the specialty, the way to do that is to stick in the column on the left. The easiest thing for us to evaluate is original research. So prospective or retrospective, give us original research. A case series is going to be very valid, and as well, these things are going to be very easy for the committee to evaluate. We discourage the evaluation of case reports and review articles for two reasons. The first one is that a lot of the journals that still accept case reports and which would meet the journal quality requirements are going to have these be very narrow in length, and so that's going to make it really hard to assess whether you're contributing to the specialty, or it makes it hard to contribute to the specialty. The other is review articles generally are not going to be something that a resident is going to be first author on if they're contributing to the specialty. There's a lot of good review articles that have been written, and I've written several myself, on internal medicine things for use by general practitioners, but that's not contributing to the specialty. And so those would not be things I'd be wanting to try and use as my publication requirement. I'm going to save those as things that I'm doing for fun. Things that are definitely not accepted include clinical briefs or vignettes, what's your diagnoses, or other serial articles, and then of course non-peer-reviewed materials. So making things easy, the easiest thing is to look at the so-called approved journal list, which is actually a generally acceptable list. It's included in the publication information packet. Currently it's on page 9 of the packet. It might move a little bit, but it's not going to move too far. It's a dynamic list, and you don't want to assume that just because a journal has at one time been on the list that it's currently on the list. There are also not going to be things on that list that might be really no-brainers, but there's no point in having them on the list because they're kind of uncommon. So for example, if you've got something so cutting edge that it's going to be published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and then, but it's relevant to small animal internal medicine, boy, we don't want to hold you back from publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine. That'd be amazing, but we're not going to have that on our generally acceptable list any more than we're going to have Nature on our generally acceptable list, because that's not something that residents commonly succeed in publishing in because of the competitiveness of the journal. So there are things that won't be on that list, but there are really good things on there. It's generally a good list of starting point of the most commonly published in journals that meet rigor, the appropriate rigor of review. So if you have a journal like the New England Journal of Medicine that you want to publish in that's not on the list, what you want to do is you need to get from the editor a letter describing the review process as well as the name of 3 individuals that have reviewed manuscripts in the past year, preferably in the area of small animal internal medicine. These people will be contacted to provide input on the quality of peer review that they were asked to provide, as well as how that was handled by the journal, in order for us to determine that the journal is exercising an appropriate standard. Additionally, you need to justify in a letter yourself to the committee how the journal's previously published content advanced the specialty of small animal internal medicine. So this is where you say, this journal is really important for small animal internal medicine, and I can show you this because look at this, they published this great paper looking at DLA alleles in association with protection of diabetes in dogs, or something like that. Making things up here, but it gives you an idea. And so these things together are used for us to evaluate the journal and determine if it is an acceptable journal for publication to meet this requirement. It's going to take some time. Currently, we are allowed, I think it's 8 weeks, it's either 8 or 12 weeks to complete the process of journal approval, and that's because we have to contact the people who have reviewed for the journal. We also have to get the information from the editor and so on and so forth. The committee has to review it and then come to a consensus. And once that has been done, then that completes the process of journal approval. It's really important to understand that journal approval and manuscript approval are not the same thing. Just because the journal has approved doesn't mean the manuscript will be approved. However, it really is smart, if you want to publish in a journal not on the generally acceptable list, to pursue journal approval before manuscript submission. What you don't want to do is, quote unquote, waste your publication by submitting the manuscript to a journal that will not pass review, because then even if the study was good, we have no way of assessing that and cannot move forward with that. So you want to make sure before you commit to submitting a manuscript to a journal that it's on the list or gets approved. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to do an additional publication. What are tips to make this go well? The first is start early. So within the first 6 months of your residency, you want to be coming up with ideas, and by the end of that first 6 months, you want to have a study design and be started on data collection. Try to avoid controversy. If something is of unclear relevance to the specialty of small animal internal medicine, save it for fun. Get your publication requirement out of the way first. Non-novel case reports, generalist reviews, these are generally not going to meet this requirement. Again, non-approved journals, wasting your research project with a journal that isn't going to have appropriate rigor, things like that. You're just setting yourself up for failure. So avoid those things. And when you're thinking about this, you want to never ever think outside the box. So make it easy for us to approve you to meet this requirement and do your due diligence, and then move on and do other things after. So that's the publication requirement. Now, once we've been through the entire credentials packet, then what's going to happen is hopefully you will have achieved a conditional approval, which means that you've submitted all of the appropriate records, things look on track, you've got the appropriate amount of contact time to be allowed to sit the specialty exam, and once you receive conditional approval, then your next task is you need to make sure to pay the exam fee, which has a deadline generally of February 2nd of the year, although they certainly may change this, and this PowerPoint should not be taken as the guarantee on deadlines. Deadlines are subject to change. This is a general information talk. You're going to pass the specialty exam. I know you will. You're going to rock it. And then once you do, you need to finish the process. So you want to go ahead and after you've completed things, you need to submit to the ACVIM office documentation that you've completed any outstanding items. And that means completion of your residency along with achieving your residency certificate. If you hadn't had it already, completing your publication and getting your publication approval, or if you had outstanding scholarly activity, responsibilities that you needed to do, you're going to submit documentation confirming all of these things are done. And then after that, you will once your last criteria or outstanding requirement has been met, you will immediately be granted status as a diplomate of ACVIM. It is important to note that doesn't mean you will get to go through, let's say you complete these requirements in May, you're not going to be able to get your certificate that year because there is a time frame between when you have to have all of your requirements into the ACVM office in order to be included in the certificate ceremony. So, and I can tell you, late May, you're not going to be walking that year because they're not going to have time to have processed all of the materials appropriately. So you do want to be mindful of that and try and, as soon as you get things done, get them turned in so there's no question of being able to walk in the soonest year possible. Well, I'm hoping that that's really helpful and will clear up some misunderstanding or challenges in completing the packet. And I look forward to having you all as my colleagues in the college. And maybe you too, once you have your happy little tassel, as it were, will enjoy the rewards of serving on a committee for ACVIM. Thanks.